This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey, who is enjoying his time in the snowy, mid-Atlantic, right?
Yeah, you're normally the one that gets to enjoy the snow up in your neck of the woods, and we kind of pass it by. But today in West Virginia, we have canceled schools and sled riding and snow. Olaf and Baymax snowmen on my front yard. But I've escaped. I'm tucked away here, ready to podcast.
Okay. And we have a lot of interesting news this week and a fun feature. So why don't we get to it then and start things off by thanking today's sponsor, which is Be Our Guest Vacations. And Be Our Guest Vacations is a platinum-level earmarked travel agency with concierge-level services to make your next trip to Universal epic. Ooh, I see what you did there, Eric. Their teams of expert agents plan vacations across the globe, from Universal Orlando, Hollywood, Disney parks, cruises, and adventures. The team at Be Our Guest Vacations will help you have the best possible experience without the stress. So reach out to the team at beourguestvacations.com today and be sure to let them know that it was the Epic Universal Podcast that sent you there. All right, Eric, so what do we have in the news coming out of Universal this week?
Well, Jim, I think it's hot off the press. You sent it over. You got a good message email from, I believe, Universal Media that they announced all the Mardi Gras. So I think that's straight today. They talked about the big, the artists and everything for 2025 celebration of Mardi Gras.
Yeah. Now, this year's event, I'm kind of surprised at how long it runs. The celebration dates are February 1st through March 30th, 2025. And this is actually the 30th anniversary, the 30th year they've been doing Mardi Gras down in Florida.
Listen, that's before I dove into the Universal world, I always heard of Mardi Gras being like one of the events there. So I'm still, but also let's be real. Last year when we were talking about it on the podcast, it was still very fresh to me. I didn't really dig in, didn't really understand what this is, but it seems to be like this is there's a float. They have like their floats around and kind of emulate what you would have in New Orleans Mardi Gras, right?
Yeah. Now, what's kind of interesting, and I don't know if they're going to offer this again this year, but in previous years, if you wanted the full experience for a fee, of course, you could wind up on the float.
Yeah, they are offering it, Jim. It is available. They are letting you do that. You get to throw the beads, right?
Well, and I want to share a story here. My good pal Max Schilling and his lovely bride Jamie, they did in fact, we were invited, Jim Hill Media, to come down and do this. But again, it was one of these, the winter, and snow happened and I couldn't go. So Max and Jamie live over in Davenport, and I said, hey, you want to go over to Universal and do this? And Max was always up for this sort of thing, where Jamie is the adult in the relationship, and it's like, oh, geez, Max, I don't know if we should do this. But he persuades his bride, and that night they end up on a float, and they have a giant cardboard box full of beads at their feet that they're supposed to toss out along the route of the parade. And Max just gets into it immediately and is tossing them out left and right. Jamie's a little more tentative, and that's largely because Jamie is a lovely person, but not really good at sports. And it seems like every time she threw a bead, it landed in the face of a child, not in their hand, but literally. And finally, I want to say, when she threw one and it landed flat in a baby carriage, and she could hear the squall of the child that been maimed, and it's like, that's it, I'm not doing this anymore. And then she got yelled at for the rest of the parade route because people were like, throw some beads. And it's like, no, I'll kill you.
Yeah, that seems like there's a lot. Well, I guess I don't know how much a bead could hurt, but there seems to be some
Well,
liability there to let. I wonder if you have to sign waivers if you're going to throw the beads.
I wonder if there's actually something in the back of your Universal ticket to the effect of if you get hit in the face with some beads, not our fault.
That's right. I'm time to read the fine print, but I'll
There we
tell
go.
you, I don't know if they ride. I imagine that they're just here to perform, but they did announce that on the main stage, the
Mhm,
Plaza stage, there are the acts this year, and T Pain
mhm.
is February 1st, Joe
Okay.
Jonas the 8th, and those were kind of the big performers.
Mhm,
Oh, Juanes,
mhm,
I
mhm,
believe is probably how you would pronounce that. But Cool and the Gang, Foster the People, DJ, Pauly D, and TLC. There's a total of 12 concerts in all during this 2-month spread,
mhm.
and 6 all new floats, all inspired by the New Orleans cruise, featuring themes of foods, beads, and bayou life. So
Mhm.
I don't know, Jim, have you been there for this before?
I have done it a couple of years, and it's between the food and the music, and actually the parade is really. I mean, these floats are enormous, and sometimes when they're making that turn off of Hollywood Boulevard into, well, now this would be, what is it, Minion Land.
Yeah.
Making that turn when you're a giant 60-foot long alligator wearing a crown. That's impressive sometimes, but
Yeah.
speaking of which, though, this year I assume there's a food component.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a hot maple, oh
Mm.
geez, a salmon. We're not even gonna try to pronounce all this stuff.
Okay.
There's a
Mhm.
there's some spicy chicken bites,
Mhm.
Colombian burger. So they're taking some stuff from Canada, China. They're kind of talking about its cuisine from all around the world, not
Okay.
just New
Okay.
Orleans. But
Mhm.
and then you have some on-site special offerings. So there's Bourbon Street's beignets at the Hard Rock Hotel. So that sounds very New Orleans. Bayou Shrimp and Grits at Ventura Hotel and Po'
Mhm.
Boys at the
Mhm.
Endless Summer Resort. So I don't think I'll be able to make it down during this time around, but it
Mhm.
is going to be one of those things when Lauren and I are looking to do we typically try to go to Florida one time in a March.
Mhm.
This is certainly, I'm going to try to eyeball it up, not this year, but maybe next.
Okay.
Although
Mhm.
those who are looking, they do have some decent deals going on. If you're a Florida resident, you can buy a 2 park, 1 day park to park ticket and get 2 free, which
Mhm.
is, and of course, there's special rates for the Stella Nova and Terra Luna Resort, which will be open, right?
Oh,
And if you're a
well,
pass holder now, you also
okay.
get to $100 in savings on a new annual pass. So if you want to sign up, this is the time to do it. And of course, I guess there's probably special viewing areas for
Mhm.
the annual pass holders and several discounts. So not too shabby.
Okay, and just to circle back to the whole Jamie and Max experience, it does say here in the info that Eric pulled together for tonight's show, that yeah, there is the exclusive Mardi Gras float, ride, and dine
Right.
experience. So they say right up front, so you can toss beads from a parade float, so you yourself can maim children, but also you can enjoy prior to this scarring a child forever experience. You can enjoy a three-course meal at one of 8 participating restaurants at the resort. So,
Well, there you go. The
okay.
question is, you're going to score higher from throwing the beads or at Minion Blast? Which one? Either way, you're a villain if you hit a
Uh,
child. So
well, that's the thing. I have no hand-eye coordination, so I just I think in both cases I'll be the one who sits out front and watches the bags. You guys go have a good time.
there you
I'll
go.
watch the bags. So,
There you go.
all
Well,
right.
Jim, we were talking about universal annual pass holders, and this is a real quick thing. And I don't know if they've done this before. You might be able to tell me, but now there's a year-round exclusive Islands of Adventure entrance for the pass holders as a benefit that now they have their own quick lane to get in. And
Mhm.
I know that it's at the Disney parks, I'm always happy to jump over to the annual pass holder line, but it looks like from 8 to 12 daily now that this is happening. So, is this new? Have you ever seen annual pass holder?
My understanding is that again, Universal is doing this year deliberately because obviously Epic Universe May is what 4 months out at this
It's
point.
coming. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole notion is again, it's going to be an interesting summer if you're an annual pass holder getting over into Epic Universe. So the effort is being made to the effect of look. We'll make it as easy as possible to get into the other parks, and we'll do what we can for you for Epic Universe. Showing the pass holders some love out ahead of the opening so they will be that much more understanding when Epic Universe is having its issues, as
Right.
every theme park on the planet does when it opens, folks. I'm not saying bad things in advance about Universal. It's just a hard reality. You open a theme park and then you made it the way you thought people would use it, and then people show up and use it in an entirely different way.
Yeah. So this is a nice little thing to do for the pass holder. So that's good. This next
Mhm.
story, Jim, I have a question. Have you ever been able to visit, or are you familiar with Give Kids the World?
Oh, yes, yes. The folks who run both this wonderful organization, the actual physical village there out on 192, they've been nice enough to host myself and Nancy a couple of times. And so big fan of what this organization is and what it does. And of course, so is Universal. In fact, I, how long has their partnership been going on?
Oh shoot, I don't know. Well, they're celebrating since the '90s, so maybe it's been going on since the '90s. Because what we're going to
Okay.
talk about is that
Mhm.
they're having a universally '90s event on
Oh,
February 1st. That's an after-hours event
okay.
that essentially all the proceeds will go to Give Kids the World in their village. So they're having like a block party or an after-hours event that they're kind of taking out the at Islands of Adventure. You're able to go into the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Hogsmeade, and that kind of gives you Hagrid's and Flight of the Hippogriff, and of course Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, kind of all to yourself if you join on this. Along with in City Walk, you can do. They're having like a '90s party, so you are inspired to dress in the '90s themed outfits. So
Wow.
yeah, so
Okay.
we never talked before, Jim. I had a feeling and a hunch that you've been able to visit or support this organization before, and I've heard it in the news forever. So one day I'd love to see how this all works.
Well, I mean, we will definitely get you and Lauren over there sometime. And what's absolutely fascinating about Give Kids the World is it's the one place in Orlando. I mean, face it, I'm dating myself here by using this reference, but Disney and Universal have kind of a Macy's Gimbals thing going on. They're competitors, and sometimes really aggressive competitors. But on when it comes to Give Kids the World, everybody drops their agendas, and so many people volunteer the time, whether it's to build new attractions there for the kids to use, and think about it when you're designing, for example, a carousel for kids who have ADA issues. And it's not a question of, okay, we need to put a couple of horses on here for kids with ADA. We have to build an entire carousel because those are
Right.
the families that are down there. And you have all of these people who work, whether it's in Imagineering or Universal Creative, who donate time and put real considerable thought into creating the stuff here, and not just for the kids but also for the families, because face it, they've been going through a stressful time as well. I mean, it just I have to say this every time I go there. I just marvel at the staff and the care and attention, and just I love the fact that, especially in today's world where things just seem so divisive, and we've all gotten so good at talking past one another, not to one another. To see a place like this where it's like, the only thing that matters here is the kids,
Right.
and their families, and that they have as easy a time as possible when they're down here in Orlando. And it just again, we'll get you over there. I'm just gonna warn both you and Lauren. It's just sort of stock up on Kleenex.
Yeah. No, I was going to say
It's
that.
tough that way.
Right, right. Well, so if you're down in the area, guys, from on the first, it's a good thing to support. I don't know if it's sold out or not. Tickets are anywhere from like 300 to $500, but I think it goes to a good cause. So
Hmm.
give it a go. Jim, and the next couple ones, I got some quick hitters here for us. I have some
Okay.
really good news for you. All right.
Hmm.
Uh, the Paradon Flyers at Universal Islands, they're
Hmm.
testing. They should be reopening. I know that was a big question. So the fact is, 56 inches must be accompanied by a guest between 36 and 56. Miles is still within that time frame, Jim. We can get you on this ride.
Okay.
You can borrow Miles.
I will actually take you up on that. I have forever looked at that thing, and Alice aged out before she and I could get on it. And let's be honest, I'm a fairly hefty guy, and so there were kids who were like, "You want me to ride with him? You're my parents. I thought you loved me." But want to say that through the miracle of Ozempic, that there have been some recent changes in my life. So it's like I could ride this and not actually endanger Miles. So
well, listen, we might have about 2 years. He's growing like a sprout, but I think he's still under 56. So we got to get down there together, and
Okay.
and you and we'll take pictures, photo op, Miles, and you finally checking this off your list. But
that would be great.
With
That would
this
be
one
great.
coming up, one Jurassic Park ride coming up, one's going down. So Jurassic Park River, it's only down for a short period of time, from the 6th to the 23rd. So it's just going down. But this prompted the question for me. Islands of Adventure has a lot of water rides. Do they take like a hit in the winter? I mean, I know when we went in December, I'm like, I'm not even going to go to this side of the park because I'm not getting wet.
Well, now what is the term that Mr. Schul uses? We were talking about this the other day when we were recording the Alien Encounter attraction show for Disney Unpacked. But there's a term when a guest will walk up to an attraction and go, "Nope." And I want
self-regulate or something in that case.
There we go. Yeah, that they will opt out on their own of a line. And face it, it's January. It's kind of cold in Orlando, and you look at that big splash at the bottom of the Jurassic Park River Adventure, and it's
no thanks.
Nope.
Yeah. Well, I thought it would be interesting. I haven't looked at it, but this is kind of my first go around the entire year. It's going to be interesting. I would like to look at like touring plans data and just imagine if you have 3 rides, at least 3 rides that are kind of low, not a lot of people using. I imagine the rest of the rides skyrocket in wait time. So it's just interesting to think about that.
No, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing when Islands actually opened in May of '99. That was a comment. It's like when you think Bill Gerard barge, when you think about Dudley Do-Light Ripsaddle Falls, and then the river ride. I mean, this and never mind about One Fish Blue Fish, where you get sprayed in the face. This was a park where it's like, are you guys just trying to sell towels? I mean, just be honest with me. I'm supposed to buy a towel, right?
That's right. That's well, last story, Jim, and this is a real quick one. The green eggs and ham sign has been removed again. The sign was removed in 2019 of the fall. It just returned in November. I saw it, and it was down again as of January 1st. Jim, is this sign dangerous? What are they scared the fork is going to stab someone? What is going on here?
Okay, I'm going to go a different way here. My question is Green Eggs and Ham still open? Is it more a case of this quick service restaurant, which opened in November, which again, busy time of year, especially on that side of the park with Hoolibration? If in fact, face it, at this point, the park has been reset and Seuss Landing is now back to its kooky, crazy look, but certainly not the big draw that it always is during the holiday season. And perhaps this quick service restaurant has actually gone down in a way to prevent people accidentally queuing up to get their green eggs and hams. They pull down the sign.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a retractable sign, I guess. it's better than it being a risk of falling on someone. So I guess if anybody's down there, let us know. Shoot us a message over on the internet. Let us know if it's actually down. We were gonna try it. I mean, it sounded like a place to eat, but boy, we loved that Circus McGurkus.
Well, I was about to say, you guys went to Circus McGurkus twice.
Right. That's
okay.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I'd love to go there, but man, we got these fries and burgers over here looking at us. So, Jim, that was the news. That's what we had this week.
Got it. Okay. So, folks, we spent most of the news section of this week's show talking about Universal Orlando. When we get back from the break, we're going to talk about something that happened actually at Universal Studios Hollywood back in the 90s. And again, thanks to Mr. Hersey for unearthing this, because I hadn't seen this in a while. And wow. We're going to talk about your studio and you. But first,
my dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This. And we're back. Okay, Eric. So anyone who's listened to the Epic Universal podcast knows that Mr. Hersey and I love to explore the weirder aspects of the history of the Universal parks. And today, well, we have a doozy of a story that you actually dug up. Because you're a fan, a big fan of South Park, right? The show that Matt Stone and Trey Parker came up with back in the late 90s, right?
Yeah, I would dare to say that I'm not just a fan of South Park. I mean, I am really, really a big fan of Trey Parker and Matt Stone and almost everything they've created. They have that kind of perfect humor for me. I find myself laughing about anything and everything. I do own the DVD Cannibal the Musical, if you're familiar with that. I've watched that. I did get sucked into a rabbit hole and started watching Time Warped, which was their college musical like television show they made. And it's not great, but it made me laugh multiple times. And of course, like I came across Josh Gad for the first time because I had the soundtrack of the Book of Mormon and listened to that on repeat. Crazy. And let's just say Josh Gad's character would have done a great job making the Book of Boba Fett on Disney Plus, because that was a gag that so yeah, no, I'm a huge fan. So I actually watched this video that we're going to talk about years ago when I was searching for all their like unreleased stuff, but I didn't have any understanding of it until just recently. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, well, what Eric is referring to, that this is actually something that predates South Park, which, by the way, didn't debut on Comedy Central till August of 1997. And by then, Matt and Trey were already known out in Hollywood as funny guys. That's largely due to the spirit of Christmas. You have to have seen this.
Yes.
The video Christmas card they did for George Clooney.
Yes, I have.
So, I mean, is that, by the way, the very first time we get to see Cartman, Kenny, Stan, and Kyle?
I believe so, right?
Okay. Because I those of you who haven't seen this, and I apologize for sending you to look at this in January, because this is really kind of a holiday thing, but it's so hard to describe. It's basically, what is it?
It's Santa Claus and Jesus in a boxing fight, right?
That's right. They're fighting for the kids' affections at Christmas. Who do you really love at Christmas? And it is, it's amazing. But what's also amazing, though, is this is what helped Matt and Trey break through. And you have to understand that this is prior to the internet, folks. I mean, they did this in the early 1990s. So every copy of The Spirit of Christmas was actually made on a VHS tape and then mailed. I mean, that friends of George Clooney got this the old-fashioned way. Walked out to the mailbox, there was a video in, they plugged it in, and it only began to spread because friends saw it and said, this is too funny. I have to make a copy for my friends. And that literally involved going out, buying tapes, setting up another VHS,
right,
and passing those along. And so things didn't move as fast as they do today, but Spirit of Christmas still became a sensation out west. And Matt and Trey had other supporters in the entertainment industry, and among them was David Zucker, who was one of the members of Zaz, Zucker, Abram Zucker. And so you got to know these guys, the ones who did Airplane in 1980, and then the 3 Naked Gun movies in 88, 91, and 94. And all of those films were made for Paramount Pictures. But in the late winter, early spring of 1995, Universal persuaded the Zucker brothers, and by that I mean David and Jerry, to come on over and set up shop in a bungalow on the lower lot, with the hope that some point further down the line, the Zuckers would start making funny stuff for Universal. So it's during this exact same window of time. So we're now talking April of 1995 that news breaks that Seagram's, and yes, the adult beverage company, which, by the way, at the time was making an absolute fortune off of the sale of wine coolers, it was about to buy a majority stake in MCA Universal. And when I say majority stake, 80% of the company's available stock, which was then effectively going to make Seagram's the new owner of Universal.
Which is just baffling, Jim. It's just crazy to think like, yeah, wine coolers are going to own it all. They're going to own the entertainment industry. You know, all the classic monsters.
But you have to understand it was a time in the industry. In fact, what's interesting, 1995, that's the exact same year that Disney buys Cap City ABC. Yeah. You know, I mean, it was a time in the industry where there was this consolidation. Everybody was sort of looking like the only way we survive in this business is we get bigger. And what was interesting is Edgar Brofman, the owner of Seagram's, he had been paying attention to what was going on with Universal, which, by the way, had been purchased back in November of 1990 by the Matsushita Electric Industrial Company of Japan. They'd paid $7.5 billion for MCA. But here's the thing, same thing. We're going to buy stuff and get bigger, but they never entirely understood the entertainment industry. And so after butting heads with Lou Wasserman and Sidney Sheinberg, who, by the way, that's the head of Universal Studios and then the head of the Universal theme parks, and this was all over creative control of the company. Matsushita effectively washed its hands of the entire enterprise. It then turned around and agreed to sell all of its holdings in MCA to Seagram's for $5.7 billion. They effectively took a $2 billion loss just because it's like, let's get away from these crazy Hollywood people. And Brofman, again, he'd been paying attention, and he knew that some bad feeling had developed between the Hollywood creative community and again, the Japanese owners of Universal. And the thinking out west is that the executive at Matsushita Electric just had not gotten what it took to make good movies and TV shows. And Edgar, he wanted to avoid that. He wanted right from the get-go to send the message to the rank and file at Universal that Seagram's taken over the operation was not going to be Matsushita Electric Redux, that he wanted to send a clear message to Hollywood's creative community that Universal's new owners got it, that they were willing to work with Hollywood to make the best possible movies and TV shows at Universal. So, you know, how did Eric decide he was going to get this message across? He was going to make a funny movie.
Right.
Now, mind you, Brofman understood, I don't make movies, but I know funny people. And in fact, those Zucker brothers guy went just to set up shop in Universal, I should talk to them. So he reaches out to David Zucker. And David Zucker, it's a new boss. So it's like, yeah, sure, absolutely. I'll do your introduction to Universal Film. But what he doesn't tell Brofman is, no, I'm going to farm this out to those kids. And by the way, Matt and Trey had only just graduated from the University of Colorado, so they're still basically college students.
Yeah.
But again, David had seen The Spirit of Christmas and a student film that Trey had made called American History, and was like, look, help me with this project. So which brings us to your studio and you, which is, it's supposed to be a parody of an educational film from the 1950s, and they lean heavily into this. I mean, it's shot in black and white. It's
Yep.
got that generic soundtrack that you hear in every educational film from the 50s and 60s. But Eric, tell the nice people who's in this 14-minute long movie.
Oh, there's a plethora, and you start watching it, and the first time I watched it, I'm like, hold on, and you almost do a double take because you see people like Steven Spielberg, you see people like Jeffrey Katzenberg, and I'm thinking this is fresh off of him leaving, right?
Oh no, he's literally like. What is it? This was shot in the spring of 95. He left Disney in the summer of 94. So yeah,
right after.
Yep.
I thought it was fun. You see Sylvester Stallone is a great gag in this. Michael J. Fox, Angela Lansbury. So they had I was like, hold on, because I knew the story that this was a student film, or at least it was like one of their first things. How the heck did they brush paths with these A-listers?
Well, it's worth watching today because, for example, just this past weekend, Demi Moore won a Golden Globe, and she's in it. And I also want to say James Cameron.
He is. Yes.
And it's just, how did they get these people? And the other thing, what's very interesting about watching this movie, again, Your Studio and You, is every so often you're watching a bit in it, and it's like, I don't think that performer understands. I don't think they got the gag. They're in front of the camera, but I don't think they understand what they're saying. And so here's the thing. How did Matt and Trey get away with doing this? In fact, one of the running gags of this thing literally is virtually every person who's on screen is either holding a Seagram's wine cooler or being handed a Seagram's wine cooler.
Everyone.
Yeah, and but here's the thing. How did Matt and Trey get away with it? Simple. There was never actually a script for Your Studio and You. Now, mind you, David Zucker would always insist that there was, especially when he'd get on the phone with celebrities who had offices on the Universal lot. He'd pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm sending a couple of college students over later today. They're working with me on a new parody film. It's something we're shooting for the new owners of Universal, the Seagrams guys, and we just need a half hour of your time. We're shooting something for the party we'll be holding when the Seagrams people first come to the studio. And by the way, absolutely, you'll get an invite to that party. But can I count on you to help the kids out? Beautiful. They'll be over there later this morning. But here's the thing. They would do things like they'd go over to the Murder, She Wrote production office. And again, remember, they Angela Lansbury people that had been told, well, we only need a half hour of your time. And they're like, oh, Miss Lansbury, we're so sorry. You must have left our copy of the script of Your Studio, and you were back at our office, and it's clear on the other side of the lot. And we only have a half hour of your time. So how about this? Rather than waste your time, why don't you do this? Follow us over to the Psycho House, all right, where we're going to get footage of you painting the front porch of Mother Bates's house. And you'll be saying lines to the effect of, gosh, with all of these wonderful improvements going on around here, everyone is going to want to work at Universal. And by the way, can we get you to put this button on the front of your blazer that says Universal is A-OK? And Angela Lansbury, being the pro that she was, I mean, does exactly that.
Yeah, she was great.
She was. It was. And over again, the biggest names who were working on the Universal lot at that time agreed to take part in the production of Your Studio and You because again, David Zucker had vouched for Matt Stone and Trey Parker, and B, this was something that was going to be made for the new owners of Universal, and think about it. It's natural to want to look good for the new boss. But honestly, Eric, I don't think anyone at Universal anticipated that Your Studio and You would wind up being as sharp-edged as the finished product turned out to be. I mean, it's one thing to bite the hand that feeds you, but Your Studio and You, there are moments where it seems to take the hand off just bite the hand. It takes a hand off at the wrist.
Yeah.
No. It's a brutally funny film. And I would argue the meanest moment in this thing is actually reserved for Steven Spielberg. They have him, Matt and Trey. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when they pitched him on this idea. But Spielberg is supposedly the host of a Universal tram tour. And they periodically cut to the other passengers on Steven's tram tour. And among them is Jeffrey Katzenberg, who looks bored out of his mind. But supposedly you're on board the tram tour at the very exact moment where the shark attack is happening on the backstage tram tour down by the Jaws Lagoon. And Spielberg is giving the least convincing line readings for, whoa, what's going on here? Ladies and gentlemen, this never happens. Look out. It's a shark. Whoa, that is one big, scary shark. And they keep intercutting this with footage of the mechanical shark coming out of the water and sort of half-heartedly snapping its jaws, where your studio and your off-screen narrator, by the way, that's Trey Parker, is saying, well, what about tomorrow? Like, if we don't keep in step with the times, things that were once neat and thrilling can become old and stupid.
Old and stupid. Yeah.
Old and stupid. And again, it literally says this about the tram tour.
The Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, the one that's all about it.
Yeah.
Making fun of the attraction. Yeah, it's they got away with that somehow.
Yeah, and now where this gets interesting, this film was supposed to be shown only once, again, at the welcoming party for Seagram executives on the Universal lot. And I'm told that Edgar Bronfman saw the finished product at the party, hadn't seen it previously, and then walked up to David Zucker and said, it's a little bit more mean-spirited than I think it needed to be, but thank you. And anyway, at that point, your studio and you was supposed to go back into the Universal Vault, never to be seen again. But then South Park debuts on Comedy Central in August of 97, and becomes a sensation for its biting humor. And now, as happened with my co-host, Eric Hersey, a lot of folks suddenly wanted to see what else Matt and Trey had done. So it's during this time that copies of Spirit of Christmas begin to circulate, and over time, copies of Your Studio and You begin to bubble up. Which, as Stone and Parker have repeatedly pointed out since, that wasn't supposed to happen, largely because none of the celebrities who appeared in Your Studio and You had ever signed releases with Universal's legal department. Because again, this was supposed to be a movie that was only going to be shown once at a private function on the Universal lot. And and in fact, Matt mentions this. There's a wonderful thing that they did at the Paley Center back in 2000 that looked back on Matt and Trey's career. And he mentioned that, when it came to Your Studio and You, Universal wouldn't even let us keep a copy of the finished film. But anyway, it's a funny but brutal film. And by the way, also well worth taking a look at if you're a theme park history buff, because it actually shows Universal Studios Hollywood's Jurassic Park the Ride under construction on the lower lot. Remember, this was shot in spring of 95, and that attraction wouldn't actually open at the park till June of 96. So I have to ask Eric, do you have a particular favorite moment out of the film? Or
I like Michael J. Fox always asking us the redundant while eating some type of cookie. Now granted, the YouTube version that I watched is kind of tough to make out all the details, but Michael J. Fox is just sitting on a stoop and just asks the rhetorical, like, what is that supposed to mean? Or, please tell me what that is. And he's dipping and eating a cookie. So I enjoy it.
No, he's having milk and Oreos while sitting on outside of his bungalow at the Universal lot. And again, what's especially funny is that there are these sort of beats and in the film where they talk about how Universal needs to become more artist friendly. But the final thing that they have Michael J. Fox say is, "What do you mean, never say no to a sailor?" And it's just,
Yeah.
but
No, I mean, it has me laughing. There's lots of parts of that is very humorous, and there's stuff that you might, if it's not your humor, you might not get. But I absolutely love many of the bits.
No. They do a great job. And by the way, your studio and you became a lot easier to see after Seagram's sold off its share of Universal to Vivendi in the year 2000. And copies began to propagate online after that. Though I will say that Universal Legal periodically will make yet another effort to get the latest copy of your studio and you taken down off of the internet. Because again, none of these performers who appear on camera ever signed the proper releases or, more importantly, were paid for their efforts. But just bringing this to a close, if you're in need of a mean-spirited laugh in January of 2025, your studio and you is well worth 14 minutes of your time. But just going to warn you in advance here, once you watch this thing, for one, you're immediately going to be thirsty for a Seagram's wine cooler. And you're also going to have this weird desire to go out and buy a porcelain deer. All right. Which
watch and find out what that means, right?
There we go.
Oh, Jim, that's fantastic. And it kind of spawned because South Park is they've been on HBO Max, I think, forever, and they finally are over on Paramount. And even over the last couple days, a lot of information has sprouted about South Park. I think they're coming with a new season coming soon, and I think even a feature is coming. So I'm always looking forward. I think I own every single season of South Park on some type of DVD or Blu-ray aspect. So anything Trey and Matt do, I'm all for. And this was a fun watch.
Oh, no, absolutely. And thanks again for suggesting this. Just again, it is such a weird window into Universal as a corporation, and likewise the Hollywood theme park and the lower lot back in the 90s. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, please check it out. Yeah. And I guess that brings us to the end of this week's edition of the Epic Universal podcast. But as always, folks, we'd love to hear from you about what you think of the show. And if you yourself have suggestions about stuff you'd like us to talk about here, feel free to reach out. In fact, Eric, where can the nice folks find you?
You can find me at Eric Hersey on pretty much all platforms. And how about you, Jim?
I am, I'm on Twitter, X, and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and then over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And I guess that's going to do it for this week's show, folks. So on behalf of Mr. Hersey, thank you for listening, and stick around to find out what's coming up this month on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Thanks for listening to today's episode, and if you like what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. This really helps get the word out about our shows. We also have some other shows on the network that you might like. Each week, we drop a brand new Disney dish with Len Testa or animation and movie news. Please listen to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, you can also check out Drew's other podcasts, like The Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he does with Charles Hood. For all things Lucasfilm, why don't you subscribe to Looking at Lucasfilm with Brian Gahn? Likewise, we have I Want That Too with the lovely Lauren Hersey, our weekly podcast that features the latest merch and the stories behind that merch. And our Epic Universal podcast takes a look at the Universal theme park. So please join Eric Hersey and I on that weekly. If you enjoy theme park history, we also host Manufacturing the Magic with Shelley and Noah Valladolid. That podcast tells the story of how we got the modern theme parks that we enjoy today. Join myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul for our latest season of Disney Unpacked, our first ever video series exclusively for Patreon. These get released first Sunday of every month, and each month we release several exclusive podcasts to help support this video series. I want to thank everyone that supports the Jim Hill Media Network. For more information about podcasts and content, head on over to jimhillmedia.com. So that's going to do it for now, folks. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch up on the next show.